Welcome to the Merry Christmas Darling panel Quilt Along. Another fabulous panel designed by Vanessa for Moda from her Berry and Pine collection. We will be doing a 4-part tutorial. The first one that we will be doing this week is all the writing and the words that are in the center of the panel. We're going to start with Mary right here at the top of this section of writing. I want to talk to you a little bit about the chenille that we're going to be using. We're going to work with 3/8 inch wide Chenille-It. And Chenille-It comes in two different sizes. It comes in a 5/8 inch width and a 3/8 inch width. And you may think, oh, I'm going to use 5/8 because it's wider and it's that bigger is better. But not necessarily. One of the reasons that the 3/8 is our most popular size is because what you can do with it. And you'll see that as I work with it on the letters, how easy it is. It's perfect bias, so I can mold it, I can shape it around curves, I can flip it on corners, and the 3/8 is going to give you a beautiful, fluffy finish. One of the other secrets of working on a panel like this, and when you want to do letters or appliques or flowers, is my secret weapon is the water-soluble glue stick. And this is going to allow me to lay down the chenille where I want it rather than trying to do it as I go at the machine. I can have this whole word outlined with the 3/8 inch bias before I even take it to the machine. So I'm going to start with my glue stick. And just make sure it's a water-soluble glue stick, just like you get for the kids in the school supply section of your grocery store. And I'm going to just do a short section and lay down the glue. And then I'm going to start with the chenille. And I'm just laying that down the center of this letter. And as I'm going, I'm just pressing it down as I go. When I come up to the curve, I'm just going to press that in place. That's going to make it much easier when I go to stitch it down. I'll come down to this straight line, and now I need to go back up. So you don't have to cut it. You can just flip it at the very bottom and bring that back up the other direction. Again, pressing it in place. Just work slowly around your curve. Bring it down to the bottom, flip, come back up. And part of that is going to be lapped over a little bit. And that's fine. When that's washed and fluffed up, you're not even going to see that. And bring that down to the point where I ended my glue. You don't want to get too far ahead with your glue stick. It'll start to dry up, and then you won't be able to work with it as well. So then I pull out my glue stick again. And I'm going to follow the lines as if I was actually writing it. So I'm going to come up this way, come back around the E, and back down to the bottom, just like you would if you were actually hand writing. We'll do the E and the R. Now as I come up to the top of the E, that's a little bit more of a severe curve. So I'm going to, rather than shape it, I'm going to flip it right there. Flip it at the top, and you can see that that still covers everything that I'm doing. And come down to the bottom. Bring it up to the top of the R. And again, flip it. And then I'm going to turn the corner by flipping it. And then I'm going to turn the next corner again to flip that down to the bottom. Now we're ready to stitch the Chenille-It in place. We've glued it on the word Mary, the complete word, and now we're ready to stitch it down in place. You want to use a shortened stitch length, a 1.5 to 2 stitch length, so when you stitch down the center of this perfect bias, you're going to catch all the fibers and they will stay in place when it's washed, when the quilt is finished. So I'm starting with the needle down position and working in the center of the bias. And I will back stitch the very beginning of that, a couple of stitches, and then I'm just going to slowly turn this, like I said, have a needle down position so that when you turn, the panel isn't going to move as you move it along. I have a nice long area here. You can see I'm stitching down the center of the tape. I'll go a little slower as I go around my curve so I can kind of turn that as I'm going. Bring it around the curve. When I get to where I'm going to have a straight section again, I can just kind of guide that along all the way down to the bottom. And here it's overlapped a little bit, so I'm just going to stay in the center of the tape. Needle down where the bias turns. Turn it all the way around and go back up the other direction. And the entire time I'm just staying in the center of the tape. I kind of hold it in place ahead so that there are places where you're making turns where the bias may not be as flat with the glue stick as it would be in other places. So be careful with it so that you don't lose anything. You don't have to rush it. You can just take your time. Again, coming down to the bottom. Needle down at the very bottom. Turn it around. And come back up. And you're just going to continue like this until you get to the end of your Y. Mary has been glued down and stitched in place. Now we're working, move down to the word Christmas. And this is going to be the same process that we did on Mary. We're going to glue the Chenille-It in place with the water-soluble glue stick. And we'll do it a little bit at a time as we go across until it's all glued down. And then after we finish that, I'll come back and talk to you a little bit about how we do some of the detail, finishing like the dot on the I and the comma at the end of Christmas. So we'll start by gluing the 3/8 inch again down onto the letters. These letters are a little bit bigger, but we're still using the 3/8. It's going to have the same effect. You don't need to use a wider chenille because, again, we want to be able to shape it and work with it. Have a curve at the very beginning of that letter. Make sure you lay down enough of the glue stick. You don't want to get it too heavy so that it is messy and gums up your machine. Just enough to glue this in place. At the top of the H, rather than go around that curve, because it's quite a severe curve, I'm going to flip it. And that's going to give me a nicer line coming down to the bottom of the H. Just press it in places. I'll go again at the bottom. I'm going to flip it and come back up the other direction and add more glue to be able to continue around that H. And the top of that H is a little bit of a steep turn too, so that's going to be another flip, just like we did. We've got another R that is going to be flips rather than turns to do that R. So we come to the top of the H and flip it. Go all the way up to the very top before you flip it. And then bring it around the bottom of where it comes up into the R. We can curve that up to the top of the R where we have a couple of flips again. Flip it at the top, come back, flip it to go across, and flip it to come back down on the R. Okay, now we're working up to the I. We have a new letter, and we're just going to, so we're coming up straight on that. When we get to the top of the I, because it's a straight line, we're just going to flip and come right back down. I'm going to put a little bit of glue stick on top of my chenille there to hold that. We'll come back later and talk about the dot, how we're going to do the dot on the I. Now we're going up into an S, which is going to have several steep turns. So I'll make sure I've got my glue on that all the way up to the top of the T, down to the bottom of the T. And start bringing that around. Again, I'm bringing it around as if I were actually writing it. But I'm going to have some flips there and some turns, because we have to also come around the shape of that S, which is curved all the way around. Make sure you've got enough glue to hold that in place. That's one letter that you want to make sure is secure. And bring that down around to the bottom. I'm going to actually flip that when I get to this point, just because it's going to be easier to make that curve. Bring that up to the top of the T and bring it straight down. That the cross of the T is another place where we're going to come back later and add that part of the letter. We're just going to continue with the glue stick, and we'll continue until the end of the letter and then come back and do the rest. In order to get the shape of the A, we have a lot of things moving here. So I've just brought the tape up to the top of the A, and then I'm going to begin with the glue stick all over again so that I can come back and start right here and then come around the curve of the A and go up to the top and flip it like we've done on other letters that have a straight line as part of the letter. I'm going to put a little bit of glue stick on top of the chenille that I've already placed. So right there you're going to actually have a double layer, but when that's washed and bloomed, it's all going to look the same. And then I'll come down and finish the S. I cut a piece of Chenille-It to, as I worked along this word, and when I came up to the S and got almost all the way to the end, I realized I hadn't quite given myself enough room. But that's another thing that's wonderful about the Chenille-It. If I'm going to be able to take another little piece right here, glue that all down, and all I have to do is lap that maybe 1/4 of an inch over where I ended with the chenille and take it to the end and cut it off. And there again, once that's washed, that disappears. So you can lap and use pieces of chenille. It doesn't have to be one continuous piece. We're going back now to do the final details on this word. First thing I have is a dot on my eye, and I'm just going to take, you can actually measure these if you want, but these will be approximately 3/4 inch pieces of the 3/8. I'll do one up and down and press that in place. Then I'll do another one kind of at an angle. Then I'll put a little more glue down so that these stay in place, and do another. So I have 3. You can see the 3 pieces I have lapped over each other. They'll each be stitched down the center. Next we'll cross the T. Again, I'm going to get a little bit on my chenille to hold that in place as I go across, but we're simply going to take one straight piece and go from one side to the other, press it in place, and cut it off. The last thing is the comma at the end, and that's just going to be a short piece of chenille that's going to curve a little bit. Actually, I think I'm going to flip that so it gets more of a definite shape. And that will make our comma. The dot is 3 little lines. We're just going to stitch those one at a time. Back stitch at the beginning, back stitch the end, lift your needle, turn it to the next line, back stitch the beginning, back stitch to the end, and then look for your final little piece, back stitch the beginning, back stitch the end, and that will create the dot on your eye. This is the end of week 1. We've done the Merry Christmas Darling lettering on our panel, and do not wash it yet. Don't even think about washing until the quilt is finished and quilted and the edges are finished. So the next tutorial will be the elements that surround the letters, all the flowers, all the leaves, the really pretty part of the quilt. And we're really looking forward to seeing you for our next tutorial.